All right. Good weekend, obviously. We had couldn't have gone a whole lot better. We made it a little bit interesting there at the very last, but proud of how the kids handled that. The rotation starting on beam was different than what we had done all year, and they handled it well. And in a tough environment, it was probably maybe the toughest regional there was. Certainly think Kentucky is also a team worthy of making it to semifinals. They've done it all year long, and just you get into that thing and it can go south. And so just a great showing for us. One more step towards where we're trying to go, and just ready to keep the train rolling.
Coach, the broadcast said that Alexis Jeffrey had some symptoms of vertigo. Is she okay? Doing all right?
She was past that. She has not. I mean, it was some sort of, for several weeks there when we took her out of the lineup at SECs and before. I don't even think she was in the lineup in our last home meet even, but I think it was some sort of, sometimes you can get a little virus and then afterwards you have some sort of sense of dizziness or wooziness for a while, and I think that's really what it was. We had everything checked out. There was nothing overly concerning, but no, she wouldn't have been back in there had she still been exhibiting those symptoms. We were cleared to begin going when we started training her again. It was just about getting her confidence going, and she looked great. She warmed up great. She stuck every dismount all week long, and everything was fine. I've never seen her do that, so I don't have any reason to believe it'll happen again.
And Haley, I think it was a sprained elbow or something.
Yeah,
Is she all right?
Yeah, it's just it was a little. She kind of tweaked it on the first day. Jaeger on the release on bars was a little long. She had to really reach, and she kind of tweaked her ligament in her elbow, and but manageable. I think it's feeling better today, and we got our docs to check everything out and make sure that we're not unstable or something. So she gutted it out, and she did great. I mean, in some ways, I think the fact that she was preoccupied with her elbow a little bit kind of allowed her to perform so well on those last two events, because she was, you know how that goes. Sometimes somebody's sick. I think about Michael Jordan scoring 45 with the flu and running a fever and feeling like crap. Sometimes people do great things when they're it takes a little bit of the focus off.
I know you touched on it in the on the broadcast, but just the ability to kind of be themselves, and how pleased are you with where this team is right now?
They, this team has done a good job of either listening to us or it's just in their DNA. They really have done a good job of staying present and being that sort of one foot in front of the other kind of mentality that we talked to them about, and and that's been a huge key for our success this year. I think it's paid dividends for them, and I think it's got to remain that way for us to continue to advance, because it doesn't get easier now. Everybody gets excited that we're in the semifinals now, but and that's certainly in and of itself a great accomplishment. But we want to continue to move, and so we've got to stay in that mindset.
Do you think having a somewhat set rotation has helped maybe with that comfort? The specialists know their roles, and the all-rounders kind of know.
Yeah. The cool thing is we did use some flexibility. We put Liv in for Kaya on floor. Kaya did not vault on Thursday. Chase did. When we have that comfort level to be able to make those changes, I'm not afraid to do it now, even in the postseason. And in most years in my career, you wouldn't move off of anything ever. But we have enough confidence in several other people that if we need to make those kinds of strategic moves, we can. I don't want to be changing anything categorically, but certainly we have the flexibility to do that. And with Kaya's aches and pains and things like that, and Liv's shown she can go 95 or 98.75 and sometimes a 99. in those spots, and she's embraced that role really, really well. And then Chase did the same thing on vault Thursday. So yeah, we're in a comfortable place. Everybody kind of knows their role, and that's a good thing when you're in the postseason.
Just following up on Liv, her ability to do both bars and floor for you and kind of be that sub factor if you need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's become sort of that. I don't know what it is, sixth man in the NBA or relief pitcher or utility player in baseball that can play multiple positions and can go in and get the job done. There's so much value to that role, in every sport, and she has become sort of that spot and is doing it happily. Like she's I think she relishes the fact that we trust her to be able to go in last minute like that and get the job done.
What about KJ? Where have you seen her confidence grow the most, I guess?
Yeah, she's
not
tremendous.
only this season, but over the course of her career.
Yeah, KJ, every time people ask me about KJ, it kind of lights me up good because she is such a she's such a spark plug for us is kind of the description I would give it. It's not always obvious because she's a two-eventer, but her gymnastics is ferocious, and it's just if you didn't know her, like, 'cause she's not like an angry person, but her gymnastics is angry, and it's big and powerful, and it makes a statement. You can hear it in the music that she chose for her floor routine. I mean, it gets your attention, and she really creates part of our identity with that, and I hope that is a big part of our identity, is to be that aggressive sort of mindset that she exhibits.
Going into this weekend, what would you say sort of the overall attitude of the team is? We see them on social media and stuff. They're obviously very, very close. Do they sort of bounce that positivity off of each other? Is it nerves? Is it excitement?
These guys, you hear me talk about it a lot in the fall, and our internal culture is something that we emphasize and spend time on and work at. It's not something we just talk about as a catchphrase. It's not something that we just say so recruits think they're coming to a happy place. I mean, it's legitimately one of the biggest keys to any success that we have is that they pour into each other and they're invested in one another and they care about each other. That doesn't make it perfect all the time, and that they don't have their moments of disagreement and those kinds of things, but they genuinely are a family. Really. Not every team says it. I don't care what sport it is. You hear it every time from podiums like this. I don't know how many of them can do it, have it. Coaches know when they have that kind of culture, and they know when they don't. And there's no magic pill that creates it. You have to have good character. You have to have a lot of integrity within your group, and you have to spend time working at it with each other. That means taking time. That means going and doing things with each other, initiating, building relationships with one another. And they do that. And it's reflected in their social media, and I'm sure when we're on TV, I'm sure people notice it. They're a very, very connected group.
Kind of go back to KJ a little bit. I know being in the leadoff spot on pretty much any event is tough to get a really high score, but she finally got that really, really high score on vault on Saturday. Just what was that like for her, and being able to see that as her coach?
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten so accustomed to seeing her land that thing. It's nice that a four judge panel got it right when so many times two judge panels this year didn't. And that vault, when she does it like that, I don't care where you do it, what county, what state, what country, what planet, it's a 9-9 or better. It just is. And when she lands like that, it affects our entire vault lineup because she's that, I said it, spark plugger, that fire starter. She's, Lenny provided us with that. Elena provided us with that a lot in the past on that very same event. And the consistency factor of that landing that vault raises everybody's level. And I thought we vaulted much better on the second day in large part due to how KJ got us started, and that's just nature of the beast.
How rare, I guess, over the course of your career, how rare are these opportunities to compete for national championships when you're really in the thick of it? Do you sense the urgency maybe of the moment here?
I don't. I've been doing it 34 years. I've been blessed to have been part of 8 national championships, and been in the finals way more times than I've not. Not necessarily as a head coach all those years, obviously, but just it's exhilarating, it's nerve-wracking, it's all the things that you would expect, but I don't feel a sense of urgency. I know I'm comfortable knowing that this program is on a trajectory towards in the right direction and eventually, Dee Dee used to say this all the time, and it was a saying that stuck with me that I think is very apropos. You hang around the goal long enough, you'll score. And that's sort of my attitude about it. Like, we're going there with the intention of doing everything the same way we've done it all year long, and hopefully that produces the win that we all would love to have. But we're not defined by that outcome necessarily, because there's so many things you can't control when you start thinking about those results. I believe, whether it's this year or next or the next or the next, that LSU is going to win a national championship. It's just we have to stick to the formula that's working for us and not make it about a particular specific result. Otherwise, you feel like you're chasing your tail all the time. And really, for us to even keep some level of sanity, we just have to be about the process and love the process and love getting there and love each step along the way. And if we do that, then eventually the results will take care of themselves.
You may have just answered this, but yeah, just watching that broadcast, and Arkansas was going nuts because they hadn't been there, but they spoke about your all's consistency, I guess, and the ability to just be this team competing every year. I'm sure you're proud of it, but what enables you to be that team and have this consistency?
I think it's the culture that we just spoke about. Again, I have in my career, I've been part of teams that on paper should have beaten everybody and didn't, and I've been part of teams that had no business thinking they could win and they did it. And the differentiating factor is that internal culture and whether or not they have it, whether they're together, whether they're or are they divided, or are they all a bunch of individuals who don't really care about that part of this journey. So I think that's it. I think we've worked very hard, and at least in my time here, in the 12 years that I've been here, we've made culture a priority. Culture's not even the word. We've just made the relationship part of this whole thing has been a cornerstone of what we spend time on and what we emphasize. And so I think when things get tough, they fall back to that, and that's their. There's a reassuring thing. They're doing it for each other. As much as coaches think that they do it for the coach. They don't do it for the coach. They don't do it for fans. We love fans. They're doing it for each other. And when they're doing it for each other, more times than not, the good things happen.
Tell me about your freshman, obviously Connor, but Mar too, coming in and being such a contributor in her way. Just how important is it to have it from all the different levels?
It's tremendous important. I mean, your future depends on not your seniors. Your future depends on how what's coming up behind them and the development of them, not just from a skill perspective, but from an ability to set the tone. And are they learning how to lead? Are they learning how to communicate with their teammates? Are they learning the importance of what I just talked about, the relationships that they have? Are they getting that from their seniors so that when they're upperclassmen, they can pour into the younger kids on the team? That's important. I think our upperclassmen really embrace that. I watch it. I see evidence of it all the time. I've seen tremendous growth in Amari and Connor and Kylie, in terms of their maturity, the things they're saying. You hear it now in our meetings, and the contributions that they make to those conversations are immensely different than they were in August and September. And so yeah, it's culture, and the things that we're talking about are only real if they're sustained. Otherwise, it's just a flash in the pan. Anybody can put a group together sometimes and get lucky, and they all just happen to get along, and it works, and lightning strikes, and you go win a bunch of competitions. But for it to be sustainable, you've got to have a system in place that they believe is important, and that's what we have.
I remember when you guys would go to St. Louis, and it was the back-to-back day, and sometimes somebody would peak on the first day, and then maybe they were tired on the second.
Yeah.
Vice versa. How do you feel about this day in between?
Love it. That was something that needed to happen a long time ago, and the reason it didn't happen, quite honestly, was we were fighting for TV coverage, and TV didn't want to park a truck for that long and do those kinds of things. It's only been since the popularity of the sport has come up and the viewership has gotten to a high level that TV was willing to, when we proposed it, to go and give us that off day. I think it's great. I think the recovery day has proven to be one of the best things we can do in terms of student athlete welfare. This sport is a contact sport. People don't think about this, but it's the equivalent. You play back-to-back days of a football game. I mean, the impacts on their bodies are equivalent to that in many, many ways. And so it allows us to recover physically, mentally, emotionally. You come down from a high a little bit if you advance, and you got to kind of regroup and gather yourself again. And I think trying to do that, especially in the old days when you were in that evening session and you didn't get out of the arena sometimes till 11 o'clock, and then they had an afternoon championship the next day, those teams were at a disadvantage for the teams that were in the afternoon that could get off their feet and get dinner at a decent hour and all the things. I mean, we were back up one year. We got back to the hotel and couldn't get any decent food in us, and got to bed at midnight, and we're back up in the meeting room at 8 o'clock the next morning getting ready to go. And so it's definitely been a much better plan. And we're doing it at the regional format too. What we've got to do with the regional format, in my opinion, is get it off the Final Four weekend. We need to move that date somehow a week, or split it, or whatever we need to do. And we also need to get that thing to neutral sites. The parity is so tight now, and you saw it all over the country, and with home court advantage being what it is in our sport, when you're on your own equipment in your own environment, if we want to protect that parity and make it justifiable, then we need to get to neutral sites for the regional thing, get it off the Final Four weekend, get TV to cover it, for what it is, at least the regional championship day, because that's our Sweet 16, right? And we're trying to, as an organization, we need to be forward thinking as a coaches organization in what we're doing for the future of this sport, and things like that. It might not affect me in my career, but over time, I think, are going to make us more sustainable as a sport. With things that are on the horizon in college athletics, we need to do everything we can to increase our exposure and marketability.
What did you learn from last year's trip to Fort Worth, and what do you think this group learned, and how can you apply it this year?
Well, I don't know about last year's trip to Fort Worth, what we learned. I think we learned a lot from the whole year last year, and I've talked a lot about those attributes that we had. I don't know about specifically to, the trip to Fort Worth. We're pretty familiar with that. We kind of know our hotel. We know the restaurants we go eat, and we kind of know our routine when we get there. And so I don't know that was all that impactful. I think the entirety of the year and the state of mind that we were in is something that we learned an awful lot about, and it's been part of our success this year. We've been able to maintain many of those attributes, and from that experience that we were going through last year, which was gut-wrenching and horrible on many levels, turned out great. It made a great story for everybody else, but it's not something I'd want to live through again. And I think that's been the thing we learned the most, is that doing it for each other, doing it for the right reasons, making sure that we do our best to stay unselfish, and those types of things have bode very well for us this year.
And I'm curious because we've seen it with LSU baseball, bringing in transfer potential commitments during a postseason run here at the box. LSU women's basketball just did it recently. I'm curious, how prevalent is that in college gymnastics now, where the transfer portal starts being active now?
It's growing. I don't look at it. Garrett could tell you more about that. He's our transfer portal peruser. He scans it almost daily to see who's in and where that might go. I'm not one that thinks we're ever going to be a program, I hope, that gets overly active. I want to be really, really careful about who comes here. There's a lot of people who are enthusiastic about being at a place but might not necessarily be a fit. And the kids that we've taken so far have been fits. They've been a fit in terms of how they go about their business and the way that they want to do things. And so I don't know. They bringing them in on visits during stuff like that. Like we're not there yet. I mean, I think most of our stuff will happen if you see movement in the portal. It's going to be after the championships are over.
I'm going to squeeze in two. Just the field, obviously very SEC heavy. What does that say to the competition?
You know, it's the field SEC heavy. We went from SEC championships and then right to regionals, where we were facing two more SEC teams at regionals, and then, you know, here again, I don't know how many of us are in. 4 of the 8. I mean, it's a true tally. Really, if you count OU in that, is that 5? If you know, because if they're in the conference next year, so it just is the same old story, right? I mean, you know, it's just this conference. We invest in our sports, and we create an experience through this. You know, these institutions, we're blessed to have the facilities that we have and the resources that we have and the support that we have from administrators for a sport where a lot of schools don't give them that much support, that kind of support. So I just think you get the results that you look for when you invest those kind of resources. And so, look, I have been the benefactor of having a career that at 2 institutions in this conference that support us at an incredibly high level. So, you know, any success that I've had or not had, you know, is really due to the kids that we've been able to attract to the institutions and the support that we have. It's really about that more than it is anything.
What's it going to take to be successful?
We are successul.
I'm sorry, next week.
Next week, the same thing. It's just going to, as I stated, just staying true to what we've been doing all year long. If we get out of that line of thinking, we won't be successful. And there's no guarantees of anything at this point. And you can't go into it with a what if, or I got to do this, or, you know, kind of mindset. You have to go into it with a kind of almost a grateful sense of anticipation for the opportunity. And then it becomes, I get to do this versus I have to do this. If you have a have to mentality, you're doomed. I got to. There's a desperation that goes with those words. Whereas an anticipation and excitement is I get to, and I'm allowed to do this. And we try to maintain a level of gratefulness in the way that we look at each step of the way. The kids verbalize that. And when we get in our circle and they talk, they say things like, let's be grateful for this opportunity. Let's take advantage. Let's make the most of this opportunity, because you don't know what can happen.